Have you indicated to speak to this or the next?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I agree with all the other speakers that there has to be a clear demarcation between private enterprise and public service, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, part of the reasons why countries like ours, we are not able to unlock the potential of the citizens is because we take the easy route. And the easy route, Honorable Speaker, is usually where people interact with public resources. But you realize that, Honorable Speaker, when we are dealing with public resources and people enriching themselves through public resources, either via policy or directly taking public resources, Honorable Speaker, there is usually very little economic activity that is involved in making that money. And Honorable Speaker, therefore, as I rise to support any kind of bill that minimizes or even decimates corruption in our country, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, I want to make one analogy and say that the reason why in countries like Kenya and Africa, why young and possibly enterprising people find it easier to join politics other than enterprise, which is, Honorable Speaker, a juxtaposition of what happens elsewhere, is basically because of extracting political rent. The reason why you fight, for example, when you go to Wall Street, to the US, most of the young people, they graduate from universities, they either go to Wall Street or Silicon Valley, is because there is private enterprise that drives. But in Africa and other emerging economies, Honorable Speaker, and especially that which the state is still evolving, majority of those people, instead of creating value in private sector, they actually go to public sector, Honorable Speaker. And that is precisely because it is easier to extract political rent when you are dealing with a public office, something that efficiency in the private sector cannot give room. Honorable Speaker, sometimes we read on newspapers and we see cases, Honorable Speaker. And when we see a case, for example, an individual who has taken away with, let's say, 2 billion Kenya shillings, one way, Honorable Speaker, this, Honorable Speaker, creates no economic value. Because if you compare the same, an individual taking away with 2 billion Kenya shillings, and you compare the same with a private company making 2 billion Kenya shillings in net profit, Honorable Speaker, even to cite some of the listed companies, you find that a company that makes a net profit of 2 billion has got a lot of multiplier effect in the economy and involves many other people in terms of employment and, of course, other value in terms of backward and forward integration. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we must make laws that make it impossible or minimizes conflict of interest, Honorable Speaker, when it comes to public service, so that we demarcate clearly and have people who have the interest of serving serving in public sector, and those who are interested in making money, which is not a bad thing, actually making money where money should be found. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, it is important that we continue strengthening our laws to make sure that we zero in on the demarcation of what I have talked about. But, Honorable Speaker, I may have a slight problem on the definition of the conflict of interest, and especially on who the relative is. Because, Honorable Speaker, you know, even in companies, there is limited liability. And limited liability, Honorable Speaker, should also be in a person as a person. For example, citing my brother here, Honorable Moreu, he's a lawyer, but he could be having a brother who is a business person, Honorable Speaker. And you could find that Honorable Moreu is actually closer to a friend who they are not related to in terms of kin selection than a brother who they are related in terms of kin selection. And therefore, it will not be proper that then I load over Honorable Moreu the activities of his brother, for example. And then even going further, that even on Honorable Mureu's wife, and I'm using Honorable Mureu as an example, that is a relation. I don't think that is a very good path to tread on, Honorable Speaker, because then we put a lot of liability on an individual who otherwise have nothing to do with the activity of the other people who they are related in terms of kin selection. But I also have to say, Honorable Speaker, even as we talk about that, because conflict of interest is not just about making money, it is also about employment. Honorable Speaker, this happens as states evolve. Because when we look at nascent states, the only sociability that happens around a nascent state is that of kin selection. As the economies grow, as the nation grows, as a state evolves, Honorable Speaker, then the circle of sociability grows. And Honorable Speaker, then what I'm trying to say is that conflict of interest is not just about tethering, because that is what is popular in Kenya. It is also about nepotism. It is also about opportunities within where we serve. So that when you are given an opportunity to serve in a state like ours, which is based on merit, the selection should basically always be in terms of merit. And not just selection in terms of who to employ, but also who to do business with. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, I will be taking part in the amendments so that even as we strengthen the laws to demarcate clearly between public and private, then we do not give also law enforcement agencies an impossible job. Because in one way or the other, people are related. So I don't know what will be happening. Because like here in Parliament, I usually say, see Honorable John Paul. When you look at Honorable John Paul and you look at Honorable Kwenya for Kinagop, they look alike. So I don't know whether we'll be doing DNA or what will be the demarcation, Honorable Speaker, to determine who should actually deal with who. So let's not give our law enforcement agencies an impossible job. But also lastly, we must also depart from this idea that only an elected person is a public servant. Yes. Honorable Speaker, there is usually that confusion in Kenya. I see in many respects, where when you see, for example, a member of parliament or a governor or anyone elected, we seem to understand that the circle of public service is that small. But Honorable Speaker, the people who actually call the shots in public service are not the elected leaders. They are the appointed servants or public servants. Yes. And reading this bill, Honorable Speaker, it is putting much more weight on an elected person, whereas even here, for example, as a member of parliament, I am not an accounting officer anywhere. Even in CDF, I actually only play the oversight role. And therefore, we must not then continue criminalizing a person who has come out to serve, and then you want to block all their spheres in terms of blocking every other thing they do. And I'm not trying to say that politicians should do business. All I'm trying to say is that politician who is a business person should thrive in doing a business. But also, a public servant who is appointed, for example, a CS, a PS, a CEO, these people, Honorable Speaker, they are actually the ones who call the shots. Even these MPs go to queue in their offices, either especially looking for opportunities to serve in terms of projects, in terms of the people that we serve. And therefore, we should take the law where the rubber meets the road, and especially in accounting officers, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before the next speaker,